The person everyone describes as too nice is hiding something, and it's not what you think. It's not kindness. It's not generosity. It's not a pure heart that simply wants to help others. What lies beneath that constant smile, that inability to say no, that desperate need to keep everyone happy, is something far more complex, far more painful, and far more dangerous than most people ever realize. And if you are that person, or if you love someone who is, what I'm about to share with you could change everything. Because the forbidden truth about people who are too nice is that their niceness isn't a gift. It's a survival strategy, and it's slowly destroying them from the inside out. Today, we're going to pull back the curtain on one of the most misunderstood personality patterns in human psychology. We're going to explore why some people become pathologically nice, what it costs them, and most importantly, how they can break free from a prison they didn't even know they built around themselves. This isn't about becoming cold or selfish. This isn't about stopping kindness or generosity. This is about understanding the difference between authentic kindness and compulsive niceness, and discovering what it truly means to be good to others without destroying yourself in the process. So if you've ever been called too nice and felt a strange mix of pride and pain at those words, or if you've watched someone you care about give and give until there was nothing left, then stay with me. Because what we're about to uncover might be uncomfortable, but it will also set you free. Let's begin with a question that most people have never thought to ask. What's the difference between being kind and being too nice? On the surface, they might look identical. Both involve helping others. Both involve consideration and thoughtfulness. Both involve putting other people's needs into consideration. But beneath the surface, they come from completely different places. Authentic kindness flows from a place of abundance. It's a choice made freely, without expectation, without fear, without the desperate need for something in return. When a genuinely kind person helps someone, they do it because they want to, because it aligns with their values, because it brings them joy. And crucially, they can also choose not to help without feeling crushing guilt or existential terror. Compulsive niceness, on the other hand, flows from a place of emptiness. It's not a choice. It's a compulsion. It's driven by fear, by the desperate need for approval, by the terror of conflict, by the belief that love must be earned through constant service to others. When a compulsively nice person helps someone, they often feel they have no choice. They say yes when they want to say no. They smile when they want to scream. They give when they have nothing left. And if they even consider putting themselves first, they're flooded with shame, so intense it feels like drowning. This is the first forbidden truth. Being too nice isn't about having too much kindness. It's about having too little sense of self, and that emptiness at the core drives everything that follows. So where does this pattern come from? Why do some people develop this compulsive need to please everyone around them, even at the cost of their own well-being? The answer almost always lies in childhood, and what I'm about to describe might feel uncomfortably familiar. Children have one primary psychological need above all others: attachment. They need to feel securely connected to their caregivers. This isn't optional. It's not a preference. It's a survival imperative. A child who loses attachment to their caregivers in the wild environment where human psychology evolved would die. So children will do absolutely anything to maintain that attachment. And here's where things get complicated. In healthy families, children learn that they are loved unconditionally. They learn that they can have needs, express emotions, make mistakes, and even disagree with their parents, and the love will still be there. They learn that their worth is inherent, not something that must be constantly earned. But in other families, children learn something very different. They learn that love is conditional, They learn that they are valued not for who they are, but for what they provide. They learn that having needs is burdensome. They learn that expressing negative emotions is dangerous. They learn that disagreement leads to withdrawal of love or even punishment. And so these children adapt. They become hyper-attuned to the emotional states of the adults around them. They learn to read micro-expressions, tone of voice, energy shifts. They become little emotional detectives, constantly scanning for signs of displeasure. And they develop a strategy that keeps them safe. Be good, be helpful, be nice, don't cause problems, don't have needs, don't take up space, make everyone happy, and maybe, just maybe, you'll be loved. This is the birth of the too nice person. And the tragedy is that this strategy, which was adaptive and intelligent in childhood, becomes a prison in adulthood. Because the child grows up, but the pattern remains. The belief that love must be earned through niceness becomes hardwired. The terror of displeasing others becomes a constant companion. The inability to recognize their own needs, much less express them, becomes a fundamental limitation. And so they move through adult life, still operating from the programming of a frightened child, still trying to earn love that should simply be given, still betraying themselves in 1,000 small ways every single day. Let me show you what this looks like in practice. The person who is too nice says yes to every request, even when they're exhausted, overwhelmed, or simply don't want to. They agree to take on extra work projects that aren't their responsibility. They lend money they can't afford to lose. They cancel their own plans to accommodate others. They pick up the phone at all hours to listen to someone else's problems. And every single time, they feel a brief moment of relief. The other person is happy. Conflict has been avoided. Love, or what feels like love, has been secured. But that relief is quickly followed by something else. Resentment. Not that they would ever admit it. Not that they might even consciously recognize it. But deep down, a part of them keeps score. A part of them notices that they give and give, while others take and take. A part of them feels the unfairness, the imbalance, the slow drain of energy and joy. This resentment, unexpressed and unacknowledged, doesn't disappear. It goes underground. It manifests as passive aggression, that slight edge in their voice, those small acts of forgetting or being late, those little ways of expressing the anger they can't directly voice. It manifests as physical symptoms, the headaches, the digestive issues, the mysterious pains that doctors can't quite explain. It manifests as emotional exhaustion, the flatness, the loss of joy, the sense that life is something to be endured rather than enjoyed. And it manifests in their relationships. Because here's another forbidden truth. People who are too nice often end up in relationships with people who are happy to exploit that niceness. This isn't coincidence. It's pattern recognition. Those who exploit others can sense who will let them get away with it. They're drawn to the person who can't say no. They're attracted to the one who will tolerate boundary violations. They recognize the signs of someone who has been taught that their needs don't matter. And so the too nice person often finds themselves surrounded by takers, friends who only call when they need something, partners who expect endless accommodation while giving little in return, family members who treat them as the designated helper, the one who will always sacrifice, colleagues who pile work on them because they know it will get done without complaint. And the too nice person looks at this pattern and wonders what's wrong with them. Why do they keep attracting these people? Why do their relationships feel so draining? Why, despite all their giving, do they feel so alone? The answer is painful but important. When you teach people that your needs don't matter, they believe you. When you never say no, people stop asking if you want to say no. When you constantly sacrifice yourself, others learn to expect that sacrifice. The too nice person has unconsciously trained everyone around them to take them for granted. And then they wonder why they feel so unseen. But there's something even more insidious happening beneath the surface. And this might be the most forbidden truth of all. People who are too nice are often engaged in a subtle form of manipulation. Now, before you react to that, let me be clear. This manipulation is not conscious. It's not malicious. It's not the same as someone deliberately using others for personal gain. But it is manipulation nonetheless. Because when someone is compulsively nice, they're often operating from an unspoken contract. The contract goes like this: I will anticipate your needs and meet them without being asked. I will sacrifice my own comfort for yours. I will never burden you with my problems. I will always be there for you. And in return, you will love me. You will never leave me. You will never be angry with me. You will see how good I am and give me the approval I so desperately crave. This contract is never stated. It's never agreed to. The other person has no idea they're a party to it. But the too nice person is keeping careful track. And when the other person fails to uphold their end of this imaginary agreement, when they don't show sufficient appreciation, when they don't reciprocate with the same level of sacrifice, when they dare to be disappointed or angry despite all the niceness, the too nice person feels deeply betrayed. How could they? After everything I've done, don't they see how much I've given up? This is covert contracts, and it's one of the most damaging patterns that too nice people engage in. They give not freely, but with strings attached. Strings the other person never agreed to and doesn't even know exist. And then they feel victimized when those invisible strings don't produce the expected results. This isn't authentic kindness. This is a transaction disguised as generosity, and it poisons relationships from the inside out. The other person senses that something is off. They sense the expectation beneath the giving. They sense the scorekeeping beneath the smile, and they often pull away, confused and uncomfortable, without being able to articulate why, which of course confirms the too nice person's deepest fear. I gave everything and it still wasn't enough. There must be something fundamentally wrong with me. And so the cycle continues. They try to be even nicer, even more accommodating, even more self-sacrificing, and the pattern deepens. There's another cost to being too nice that rarely gets discussed. It makes you dishonest. Think about it. If you always say what people want to hear, you're not being truthful. If you pretend to be happy when you're not, that's a form of deception. If you agree with opinions you don't actually hold to avoid conflict, you're being inauthentic. If you say yes when you mean no, you're lying. The too nice person, in their desperate attempt to be liked and to avoid conflict, becomes fundamentally dishonest in their interactions. They present a false self to the world, a self that is endlessly pleasant, perpetually agreeable, without needs or boundaries or rough edges. And this false self comes at a terrible cost. First, it prevents genuine connection. How can anyone truly know you if you never show them who you really are? How can you feel loved for yourself if you only show people a carefully constructed performance? The too nice person is often surrounded by people who like the mask, but the real person beneath the mask feels utterly alone. Second, it creates constant cognitive dissonance. The gap between who you are and who you're pretending to be creates a psychological tension that is exhausting to maintain. It takes enormous energy to constantly monitor yourself, suppress your real reactions, and perform niceness when you don't feel it. This is why too nice people are often so tired. They're doing double duty, living their actual life while simultaneously performing an acceptable version of it. Third, it leads to a loss of self. When you spend years ignoring your own needs, dismissing your own feelings, and prioritizing everyone else's preferences, you start to lose touch with who you actually are. What do you really want? What do you actually enjoy? What are your real opinions, your genuine preferences, your authentic desires? Many too nice people genuinely don't know. They've spent so long being what others want them to be that they've lost connection to their own identity. They're like actors who have been playing a role for so long they've forgotten their acting. This is perhaps the deepest tragedy of all. The too nice person in their attempt to be loved, becomes a stranger to themselves. And you cannot give from a self you no longer know. So what's the way out? How does someone who has spent their entire life being too nice begin to change? The first step is awareness. And if you've made it this far, you've already begun. Simply recognizing the pattern, understanding its origins, seeing its costs. This is the foundation of change. You cannot transform what you cannot see. The second step is grieving. This might sound strange, but it's essential. You need to grieve the childhood you should have had. You need to grieve the unconditional love you deserved but didn't receive. You need to grieve all the years you spent performing niceness instead of living authentically. You need to grieve the relationships that were built on your false self and may not survive your transformation. This grief is real and valid. Don't skip it. Don't rush through it. It's not self-pity. It's necessary acknowledgement of real loss. The third step is learning to feel. Many too nice people have become so disconnected from their emotions that they genuinely don't know what they feel. They know what they should feel. They know what would make others comfortable for them to feel. But their actual raw, unfiltered emotional experience has been suppressed for so long, it's become inaccessible. This is where practices like mindfulness, journaling, and therapy become invaluable. Learning to check in with yourself throughout the day. Learning to notice physical sensations that signal emotions. Learning to name what you're feeling without immediately judging it or suppressing it. This is slow work, but it's foundational. The fourth step is practicing boundary setting. And this is where things get challenging. Because for the too nice person, setting boundaries feels dangerous. It triggers all the old fears of abandonment, rejection, loss of love. It feels selfish, wrong, even cruel. But boundaries are not walls. They're not about keeping people out. They're about defining where you end and others begin. They're about being honest about what you can and cannot give. They're about respecting yourself enough to say no when no is the truth. Start small. Practice saying no to low-stakes requests. Notice the fear that arises. Notice that the feared catastrophe usually doesn't happen. Notice that many relationships actually improve when you become more honest. The people who leave when you start having boundaries are the people who were only there for what they could extract from you. Their departure is not a loss, it's a revelation. The fifth step is tolerating discomfort. Change is uncomfortable. Saying no is uncomfortable. Having people be disappointed in you is uncomfortable. Sitting with your own emotions instead of rushing to fix everyone else's is uncomfortable. But discomfort is not the same as danger. One of the key insights for too nice people is learning to distinguish between feeling unsafe and actually being unsafe. The feeling of danger when you set a boundary is a memory. It's your nervous system replaying the childhood experience when withdrawal of love felt like a survival threat. But you're not a child anymore. Losing someone's approval will not kill you. Disappointing someone will not destroy you. Being disliked by some people is not a catastrophe. It's a normal part of being a real person in the world. Learning to tolerate this discomfort, to feel it fully without automatically trying to fix it through people-pleasing, is one of the most important skills you can develop. The sixth step is building a new identity. As you begin to change, you'll need to answer some fundamental questions. Who am I when I'm not performing niceness? What do I actually want from my life? What are my real values, not the values I was taught to perform? What brings me genuine joy, not the satisfaction of pleasing others? This is exciting work. It's the reclamation of a self that was put aside long ago. It's the discovery of a person you may have never fully met. And it's the foundation for relationships that are actually nourishing. Because here's what happens when you stop being too nice. You start being real. And real creates connection that niceness never could. When you can say no, your yes actually means something. When you can express disagreement, your agreement has value. When you can show your real emotions, people can actually know you. When you have boundaries, people can trust that you're being honest with them. Paradoxically, becoming less nice often makes you more genuinely kind, because kindness that comes from choice is more meaningful than niceness that comes from compulsion. Generosity that comes from abundance is more sustainable than giving that comes from emptiness. Love that is freely given is more real than performance that is desperately offered. The people who matter, the ones capable of genuine connection, will not be driven away by your boundaries. They will respect them. They will feel safer with you because they know you're being real. They will trust you more because they know your niceness is authentic, not compulsive. And the people who leave, the ones who only valued you for your compliance, let them go. They were never loving you. They were loving what you could do for them. And that's not a relationship worth keeping. I want to address something important before we close. Some of you might be listening to this and feeling defensive. You might be thinking that there's nothing wrong with being nice. You might be thinking that I'm advocating for selfishness or coldness. You might be thinking that the world needs more nice people, not fewer. And you're right that the world needs kindness. You're right that consideration and generosity are virtues. You're right that there's nothing wrong with wanting to help others and make people happy. But there's a difference between kindness and self-abandonment. There's a difference between generosity and compulsive giving. There's a difference between being considerate and erasing yourself. The goal isn't to stop being kind. The goal is to be kind from a place of wholeness rather than emptiness. To give because you want to, not because you're terrified of what happens if you don't. To say yes when you mean yes and no when you mean no. To show up authentically in your relationships instead of performing a version of yourself you think others want to see. This is actually more loving to others, not less. When you're honest about your limits, others don't have to wonder if they're burdening you. When you can receive as well as give, relationships can be truly reciprocal. When you take care of yourself, you actually have something real to offer others. The depleted, exhausted, resentful version of you that results from chronic overgiving is not actually helping anyone. The whole, boundaried, authentic version of you is a gift to everyone you encounter. So if you recognize yourself in what I've described today, I want to offer you some final thoughts. Your niceness was a brilliant adaptation to a difficult situation. It kept you safe when you were small and powerless. It helped you navigate an environment where love was conditional. It was the best strategy you had at the time. But you're not small anymore. You're not powerless anymore. And you don't have to earn love anymore. You can start to put down the heavy burden of constant performance. You can start to discover who you are beneath the niceness. You can start to build relationships based on authenticity rather than accommodation. This won't be easy. The patterns are deep. The fears are real. The process of change is uncomfortable. But on the other side is something beautiful. A life where you actually know yourself. Relationships where you're actually seen. A sense of peace that comes from no longer betraying yourself. And a kind of kindness that is freely given, genuinely felt, and truly sustainable. That's not too nice. That's just right. If this spoke to you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Because the too nice people in your life are often the ones who would never seek this information for themselves. They're too busy taking care of everyone else. Maybe this time you can take care of them. And if you are that too nice person, if you've spent your life giving to others while ignoring yourself, let me say something directly to you. You are allowed to have needs. You are allowed to take up space. You are allowed to say no. You are allowed to be imperfect. You are allowed to disappoint people. You are allowed to exist without constantly earning your right to be here. Your worth is not determined by how much you give. Your value is not measured by how few needs you have. Your lovability is not contingent on your endless accommodation. You are worthy simply because you exist. You always have been, and no amount of niceness was ever necessary to prove it. It's time to come home to yourself. It's time to discover who you are without the performance. It's time to live as the real you, not the nice you. And I promise that person is worth meeting. Healing is possible. Change is possible. You are more than your patterns, and your real life is waiting.